Welcome back to Casual Bias Rugby. Once again, the Leinster boy has returned. This time, he's looking forward to a final. Leinster,
I
welcome.
am.
First and foremost.
I'm in the finals. I get to go to the final. He doesn't.
Yeah, fair enough. But even if we were in the final, I'm not paying about 30 grand just to get to a rugby match. Okay, doesn't mean enough. If it was played in Cape Town, fair enough. Like we'll have that discussion in a bit. Like that's the interesting point we just brought up. Nerves, has it started kicking in just yet, or are you relaxed now?
Being honest, like I'd still call Toulouse heavy favourites. Just they've been too good. I'm nervous. I'm going myself. That's why, I don't want to go to London and lose the rugby match.
You're going with the humble direction this time around.
Going with the humble direction. I don't normally do that myself, but
then there's no point in having you on.
Sorry, all right, yeah. Sorry, we got to go with the podcast. Yeah, Toulouse are going to get smashed by Leinster.
Anyway, we'll jump straight into it. We'll talk about the Champions Cup and the Challenge Cup, but the people mostly come here probably for the Champions Cup. And shout out to you for making the graphics for us. On the left-hand side, we have Toulouse's fixtures, right? And probably not the hardest. They had a much easier route to the final than Leinster. Even their previous game played against Harlequins, which you would probably say is not the toughest game on earth. But it's the way that they've played that's been so impressive. Like they've been absolutely ridiculous. You have any thoughts on their run this far?
I'm just looking at the run Leinster had versus the run Toulouse had. Like Leinster were challenged a lot more. You had Leicester, like physical team, then La Rochelle absolutely hammered them, then Northampton beat them. Like two of the hardest teams you could have gotten there in the quarter and semi. And meanwhile, Toulouse kind of had an easy racing team, Exeter and Harlequins. I just don't think you can compare the runs to the final. And now saying that Toulouse dominated every single one of those teams, and Leinster really only were dominant one game, and that was La Rochelle. So.
Yeah, it kind of felt like Toulouse has been in cruise control. Like they haven't really had to get out of second gear. I think they maybe had a little fright against Exeter after the first half, but then you just saw what they can do as soon as they turn it up again. They had a bit of a blip in the semi-final against Harlequins when the second half started. But we know Harlequins can... That's the one team that can really pull something out of their asshole. If they have nothing going for them, some individual magic. They have got... Mark Smith, Tyron Green, Andre Esterhuizen. So there's a lot of class players in the Harlequins team. So you never really expected them to really get blown out of the water. But yet Toulouse still kind of made everything look so easy. And that's just what a quality side does. Now, my question to you is, does that affect them positively or negatively in terms of you guys have played the hard teams, you've been firing on all cylinders, you've been ready for this final where it's almost like they've played the weaker teams. So are they really mentally prepared to all of a sudden have to go into this is our best team, this is our best performance that we can possibly put out there?
I'm going to go ahead and say that's a negative thing. Because look at Leinster last year, dominated Toulouse, dominated Leicester, and then dominated Ulster. 3 easy games leading up to the final. And then they were testing the final, they lost. And now we're seeing the opposite this year where Toulouse haven't been really tested and Leinster have been tested. So I think Leinster are going to be a lot more used to the physical games going into this final than Toulouse are. But then they're Toulouse, They're French international teams, same way.
It's just like this. This feels like so many similarities to the World Cup leading up to that New Zealand versus South Africa final. Because it's like you felt New Zealand kind of had the easier run. Of course, South Africa was obviously in the pool of death. And then Leinster is literally pool of death, having the tough games all the way through until the final, where New Zealand, for instance, had Argentina. Obviously, they had the tough game against Ireland. But overall, if you had to compare the two, it was a lot tougher for South Africa to get there than New Zealand. And it feels like the exact same thing for the Leinster team. Pool of death. Yeah. Obviously, they didn't lose a game there or anything. And then having literally all the teams that are on form leading up to this final. I mean, surely you are crazy proud of the team, and you have to get it over the line in this final. Would you say it's a failure if you lose this final after the exceptional run that you've had, all the teams you've knocked out?
Look, I wouldn't have called it a failure if we hadn't lost the previous 2 finals. That's kind of you can't lose 3 finals on the base, man. Come on. But
That was where I was getting at, because I was like, if you say it's not a failure of a season, then it's like, well, you've lost 2 finals in a row and you can make it 3 now. So
I don't think
that would be
anyone's
a
done
tough
that
pill to
before.
swallow. Eh?
Toulon have won 3 on the bounce. No one's ever lost 3. So that'll be a new record.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah,
And obviously, just to add with that World Cup thing, like obviously that final was to play for history. Who's won the most World Cups? Like you are playing as well to equal the most amount of championships that have been won. So both teams have got a lot to play for. And I want to get into just before we start going really into how we can see this game playing out, we have to look at the semifinals. And I'll give you the floor. Your team obviously played first, went up against Northampton Saints. You were at the game, right?
Yep.
What was your emotion going through?
So they were so dominant in the first half, and then they kind of fell apart in the second half. Like they were literally 1 tackle away from being knocked out that game. Someone made a line break. I think it was Fairbank. Can't really remember. Made a line break right 78 minutes, and we were like, oh, we're done. We're knocked out. But then try saving tackle. We went through. Dodgy decision from the ref, I won't lie, but then that Reyna had a few dodgy decisions that game.
Well,
but,
we've spoken a bunch of times about. Yeah, we've spoken about a bunch of times about refs needing accountability and stuff. We won't get into that too much. So it is what it is. But obviously, like some people said, yeah, Leinster looked beatable that game, and to some degree, I would agree. Like if you look at the amount of pressure that Saints put on, if you look at the pressure that Saints put on Toulouse, now I don't know where Leinster has gone off to, so I'll just take it over from here. But I thought, welcome back. Just went off the cuff here. I'll pose the question.
I heard you. Keep going.
Oh, okay, yeah. So obviously, to some degree, I do agree that they maybe looked a bit beatable, but I also have to give Leinster a lot of credit for the defensive work they put it in there at the end. When you're so on the ropes and to still, I know you had a big scoreline to defend, but to still get it over the line is a massive, massive achievement. Like that last 10 minutes that you just defended for your lives to hold them out, that is commendable. That is absolutely insane. And we talk about Leinster having the ball a lot, attacking rugby. They don't get tested that much on defense, and they just proved with Ninaber, obviously, who's a sensational defense coach, has always been for the box. Like that is surely that gives you confidence in your defensive aspect as well, right?
We're playing a different brand of rugby. So last year we had the attacking rugby, which is weak to defensive teams. We saw it La Rochelle, but then that same kind of attack ripped Toulouse apart. But now we're doing a much more defensive approach to things. I'm really wondering, are Toulouse going to take advantage of that, or are we going to have the upper hand again? Because Toulouse, as well as having an amazing backline, they're also one of the best defensive teams in the world. They're pretty much France. So
yeah,
you really have to be good at both.
Some points this season, right? Like if you look at the amount of points they for instance just conceded against Harlequins, like surely they focus a lot on attack, but I also feel like they concede easy tries that you guys can capitalize on. Like there is a bit of a, I wouldn't say a weak link, but a bit of a weakness in that team. Every now and again when it comes to the defensive aspect, kind of like you guys focus so much on scoring tries, you almost forget to defend a bit, and that's why teams got themselves back into the game, like La Rochelle did, like Harlequins just did against Toulouse. So this is an absolutely massive game, and we'll switch over quickly to Toulouse in their game against Harlequins. What was your thought process going through this one? Obviously, you saw Harlequins coming back. Did you think, please just do the comeback, because if Harlequins go to the final, 100% you're winning the final? Or what was going through your head?
No. If Harlequins managed to pull off the win against Toulouse, I would be more nervous in the final than any team, because they won their first European knockout game in the first round. Suddenly they're in a semi-final, challenging Toulouse. Now they kind of did fall apart in the second half, but if they kept up their first half performance in the second half, they would have gone through, and I would have been terrified in the final, because that kind of running team that you just don't know what's going to come out of them,
And obviously the game would have been played in England as well.
It would be like we had last year, home final. They would have had a home final in London.
Yeah,
it's nuts. So that's a team you don't want to face in the final.
Yeah, that would have been absolutely saucy.
It would
So
have been
let's go
full of Quins
into
fans.
yeah. So let's go into the final, right?
Yeah.
Toulouse versus Leinster for all the marbles. Give me your official score prediction.
I haven't given one yet. I'm gonna go Leinster by 3.
So
Late
you got
drop
a
goal.
game.
Oh, it's a tight game. I'm calling tight game.
So Ross Byrne drop
Penalty or
goal at
drop
the
goal.
end. Wow.
Or I don't know, anyone that team could do a drop goal.
I'm going to
Kieran
go
Frawley.
Toulouse, right? But not because I think Toulouse is going to win this game. I'm going to lose just because of the
100%.
rivalry that the South Africans have at the moment against the Irish. Like, just
That
rubbing
one's
it
gonna-
in a bit more to say, listen, okay. Because obviously we're filming this on a Tuesday night, right? And the news just broke that Kitshoff is out for the Irish tour as well. And Willemse is out for the rest of the URC, the Irish tour, and the Rugby Championship. So
Really?
I just think,
No way. I didn't hear about that actually. Hold on. That's
yeah,
amazing.
it's
That's
a
not
Rugby
amazing.
mag just
Don't
posted
like
it. So
players get injured.
yeah, and I mean,
Speedy
I'm a
recovery,
massive
but you
Damian
know,
Willemse fan. He's the greatest
attack
player to ever
wise,
live. What?
going to you, I'm gonna say Hugo Keenan,
Yeah,
Ryan Baird.
yeah. I would
Yeah.
also say it pretty soft because no one would agree with you. But I mean,
No one agrees with
overall,
me. That's pretty fair. That's my page.
it is what it is. Okay, so you got Leinster with 3 points. I'm going just to switch around with Toulouse 3 points. Now, when you look at the game, obviously we're going into depth analysis here. Do you think this plays out the same way the semifinals did, where it's like one team dominates the one off and then there's like a comeback? Or do you think it's just like stays tight throughout the game?
No, it's going to be stays tight throughout the game. I'm calling a similar game to France or South Africa. You know, try, that kind of game.
It's high scoring as well.
High score and running game. You know.
Okay, fair enough. That's actually like you can have good games that are low scoring, like you can have proper good low scoring games, but obviously we want to see some points in the game as well. Like that's what
We do.
what focus
Especially
is.
a final like that where it's, you know, the main event of European rugby. You want a good game.
Yeah,
Especially in
of
this
course.
kind of year when, you know, it's growing massively. You want to top it off with a good running, high scoring game.
Yeah, fair enough. It's odd, right? Is this the first time that the final is being played before the URC or the Premiership and the top 14 has concluded?
No, it's normally in the middle. It's normally kind of in the middle, but I think they've done it this year now so that. But you know what happened last year when Leinster had the semi-finals of the URC right before the Champions
Yeah,
Cup final.
they're
So they
sugarcoating
played
it
their big team.
so that Leinster can actually try and win the double. That's what they're doing. I've
Double's
never
possible
seen a
this season.
European trophy end before the normal league. Like, it just feels
It
weird.
should. I think. I don't like that. I think it should be the league final, then the Champions Cup final. It should be the big thing at the end. You know.
Exactly. Like they had it last season was perfect.
Yeah.
If you look at football, well,
Ah,
soccer, it's
yeah.
like that as well. That because the Champions League is like the big thing about soccer, right? So
Yeah.
you want to have that as the final game of the season. There's no tournaments after it. That means it's the total break. Everyone can focus on that. Where now it's just like we haven't even had playoffs for the URC. Like it just
No,
feels odd. Like not a single playoff.
it is a weird
It,
time. I think it'll get a lot more attention as well if it was at the end of the season.
Yeah, I fully agree. It feels like this has kind of just sneaked onto us. And it's almost caught me off guard that it's now already. Anyway, that is us for the Champions Cup. Moving on to the Challenge Cup. Sharks versus Gloucester. I haven't really watched Gloucester. Have you kept an eye on them? They're in Europe. We don't get the broadcasting rights for the Prem. So
You know, not really. No, it's the Challenge Cup. The Challenge Cup's kind of always been seen as a just qualifier. You know.
yeah.
You know, it's
I mean,
just like I remember last year in the Dublin finals, like everyone had like weekend tickets to go see both finals, and just no one really went
yeah.
to the Challenge.
It
And
feels
kind of
odd,
sad,
right?
you know.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
the two teams that have not been performing in their league. Like
literally, yeah.
I,
That's why
I
it's not that
think
good.
I think Gloucester's like 7th or 8th in the Prem, and obviously the
They're ninth.
Sharks are I think 14th, 13th, or something like
Yeah,
that. It's ridiculous. And the crazy thing is, I can't believe that we might actually get to the point where the Sharks are the only South African team that takes home silverware. Like the most undeserving team throughout the season.
Literally.
They've literally lost almost twice the amount of games that they've won, and they might actually walk away with European
With a
silverware.
trophy. And
And they'll
that's
be
why
the
it's
first
hard to take
team in South
seriously.
Africa to walk away with European silverware. That is crazy.
See, they kind of want to do it like the Europa League in football, but look at the Europa League this season. One of the finalists is literally the champions of Germany, and meanwhile, the two Challenge Cup finalists are rock bottom of their leagues. It's just not
Yeah.
that exciting of a game yet.
Yeah,
Now,
but it's a bit
I'll
different,
watch it
right?
obviously.
Because obviously in soccer you can have the same team play 2 games in a week because you don't have the threat of dying on the field with tackles and stuff. You don't have obviously it's still fitness and you have to run like crazy and it's still a physical sport, but it's not rugby physical. Like you can't expect a guy to play 2 games in 1 week. Like that would
Yeah,
be absolutely ridiculous. So you need squad depth and you need to rotate the whole time. And what the Sharks have done is they've seen, listen, we're getting nowhere in the URC, so we'll just bin that off to focus on the Challenge Cup because that's the only way that we might find a way into the Champions Cup.
yeah, and that's why it's good, because it gives these teams who don't really win stuff a chance to go win a trophy, get a bit of attention for themselves. Like we look at Toulon last year, they were struggling. Leon the year before that, again, not really a known team.
Yeah.
But they got silverware from it, and I think it's good for the club. So I wouldn't scrap it. But
No,
personally,
obviously not.
Yeah.
Obviously not. Like it would be tough to just have certain teams play in one European Cup, have one for the smaller teams. That like every bit of rugby grows the sport, right? We always talk about the growth of the sport. So like the likes of a Benetton playing in the Challenge Cup, if they could have gotten over the line against Gloucester and actually win it and then being in the Champions Cup, that would be massive for them, right? Because
It'll be huge,
Italy's not your biggest rugby nation, but they're on the up. Like that would be great for their growth. And you've seen how good their growth has been in the past 2 years, for example. So that would be amazing. So I would never scrap the Challenge Cup just because we think it is ineffective or whatever. I think there's a real there is an audience for it, and I actually think it needs to just get appreciated a bit more. But that's just my opinion. But an interesting thing that I want to bring up to you is what is your thoughts on if South African teams advance, but they don't get to play home, like actually in South Africa?
Yeah.
So the Lions play home, but it has to be at the Stoop.
I have a good point to find. I'll mention in a second, but for the semi-finals, I do think they should be allowed to play in their home ground. Now they are going to change the semis. I think they're doing like neutral venues, which is a terrible idea. But personally, I think it should be 2 legs like the football. So only in the semi-finals, it could be 2 group winners. Have them play 2 legs and then they go through. But yes, they should be allowed to play in South
On
Africa.
aggregate.
On aggregate, yeah, do an aggregate.
That would be interesting.
Would be interesting, but now the only thing with that is, let's say you get like Toulouse and Harlequins. Harlequins now suddenly have to come back 20 points and then win the game. Like I just don't think that's going to happen. So that's why they haven't done it yet.
Yeah, well, stranger things have happened. So I mean, you never know what can happen when the team plays in front of their home crowd. But I just feel like I know it's the European Cup, but it's like let's say for instance my team, the Stormers, we won't necessarily play in the Challenge Cup. We'll most likely be in the Champions Cup. So it's a big thing, right? And to grow the Champions Cup, that the thing that happened with the Bulls doesn't happen again. You need to be able to get physical eyes on the game. You need South Africans to actually go and watch that game. And for us, like you guys can easily just come here. You need a passport. Everything is cheap for you to come to South Africa, right? But for me, for instance, to go to the UK now to go and watch that game, I need to book the flight tickets about 2 months before. So that pays about 20,000, if not more. They might push up the price because there's a big event, obviously. With South Africans, you don't get a normal visa like we have to actually go and apply for a visa, have to wait that time just to get it. Like that takes about 15 working days or business days, as you would say.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to predict that your team is going to win their games to go there, and you have to buy the tickets already. Like you can't just cancel stuff. That's not how it works, right? So we need to get visas, passports, everything sorted just to go there, and it's a bunch of money. Where for other people, it's just like for you, it's easy to travel to, for instance, just England, go and watch the game, or travel to France because it's so close to each other. So our boys have a home game, but they have literally no support from South Africa
This thing's
that
not
they
a
can
home game,
physically at the stadium. Like, that's crazy.
I think they should be allowed to play. Now for the final, this is a good point. So let's say they do the final in Cape Town. It's an English team and a French team. You are not going to get 50,000 people traveling to that game, and you won't get everyone from Cape Town going to that game either because Stormers aren't in it. So I think
No,
that's why they will never
most
have a
likely
final
not.
there. Yeah, you might get 15,000, which for the showpiece event is just you don't want that. So I don't think they'll ever have a final in South Africa, but semis they should host the semis.
That's the thing. Like, if you have a South African team in there, you guaranteed 60,000. Like, 100%, you're getting 60,000 because it's getting sold out because we care about our own rugby. But we haven't been in the competitions long enough to care about Toulouse. We probably care a bit more about Leinster. Like, I think Leinster could bring out some fans. Munster, for instance, because we play regularly. We watch your games. Yeah. But if you look at someone outside the URC, don't get your hopes up on selling out really when it comes to those stadiums. It's just an interesting talking point, right? Because obviously you can't set up everything to suit everyone, right? The traveling would be horrible for some of you boys to come down to South Africa. But you just look at, for instance, the Bulls, who had to play 4 games in a row where it was they down, they down, they down, they down. And how are you supposed to juggle it both? Because they were in a tight spot with the URC. You get it? And they've never won the URC. And so that is, you kind of like, what do I prioritize? Because now it's like, if I go through anyway in the Champions Cup, then I have to play Leinster. What's my chances of beating Leinster after I have to play Munster at Loftus to play for home playoff places? See that, and we get paid more in the URC than we get paid in the Champions Cup. See, it's so difficult when it comes to this traveling stuff. What would your solution be? Just like off the cuff, it doesn't even have to be the smartest thing to kind of accommodate the South African teams as well.
See, you can't really, because you're not near New Zealand, Australia. You're not near Europe. You're kind of just your own country trying to find a league to play in. Now, I was thinking this recently. Why not have so that you play all your games up in Europe, right? So you tour up in Europe at the same time as Thomas Cup knockout stage. That way you're kind of just always up there. But then you don't have your fans. That's the other thing.
Yeah. And that's a massive thing. Like,
then
you never have home ground advantage. Look at where Benetton would be in the URC if they didn't have home ground. Like, they win all their games at home, don't win any games away from home, so they'd never win a game.
Yeah,
so that's just it's tough to juggle it all. But let's go back to the Challenge Cup final. What's your official prediction with the Sharks taking on Gloucester?
Sharks by like 15.
Wow. I'm going Sharks by 8 points. They have not been convincing at all. Yeah.
I predicted literally back in September, one of my first videos on my TikTok page was the trophy predictions. I said Sharks would win this competition. So, yeah.
Yeah, on paper they should. Just look at the names.
They should.
Look at their names. They should win it. But I mean, then it's obviously Gloucester playing in England as well. It's one of those things. But anyway, we'll wrap it up over there. Tienan, Leinster, thank you for joining. Appreciate it as always. You have any final words?
Come on, Leinster. Make my travel worth it.
Come on, Toulouse. Thank you.